Let's go. We're live. We're live. You ready? We're live.
Live. It's alive. It's alive.
Do it live. We'll do it live. Do it live. Yeah, we'll do it live.
And welcome everybody to the Between Two Wheels podcast, cycling show from Northern California. On today's show, Jason Graffath, he wraps up his very individual South Canal time trial series. We'll do a little wrap up on that. World Tour is piping hot. 2020 Milan-San Remo mirrors, in a sense, the 2019 Milan-San Remo. Is Froome on the outs? World Championships might be, so we'll have to discuss those. Three big teams rise to the top. Some things that make you go, and the Rider of the Week, and all hail the Dauphine, Criterium du Dauphine. Coming up today is August 14, 2020, and this is the Between Two Wheels podcast, episode 187. Welcome, everybody. And I'm bringing in here right away Chris Flower, our renowned co-host. He's been with us for many, many episodes. Chris, I was looking back through some stats. One of the highest downloaded shows is the one we talked about, Guanji, and where you everything was phonetically spelled, the writers' names. I still go back to that every once in a while. Maybe it's me that's doing it, and listen to that. And it's one of my favorites. Favorite episodes. Humor. But you know who else we had? Crazy Man that day? We had Curt. We don't have Curt.
That's true. Yeah, he's I think knee deep in wood fixing up his new Sprinter van. So I think we've lost him for a while.
Is he making it wood? Is that what you just said?
He's making the internal framing out of wood. I'm sure he'll put up some really 70s themed wood paneling in there too. Just make it really nice and homey.
Right. Well, so how are you doing? Bike riding and life. And then you've got your data-driven athlete shirt on. I appreciate that. It looks good.
I do. Yeah. No, I'm doing well. I am getting out to ride a little bit. I saw you yesterday, and we'll probably touch on that during this Jason Graffath item. But right. Getting out a couple days a week, and then just to kind of mix it up, since there's no real racing in the foreseeable future for us, I've been mixing some running in just to dabble in something different. But other than that, doing pretty well. How about yourself? Yeah,
I've been slowly but surely bringing the weight down just a tad bit, trying to control myself a little bit there. So bike riding's been going well. I've been I haven't been using a coach, and so I'm just using Training Peaks, and I'm just watching, driving my fitness down and then fatigue and then pulling it back, and it seems to be doing well. The few, I don't know, 3-4 weeks ago, my body felt like I was just shutting down, and I just kind of backed it off a little bit. The fitness is still somewhat similar, but I feel better. So I've been doing more stretching too.
Yeah. I mean, not to give away too much of your fitness chase, but it seems like your TSS was approaching, your CTL was approaching 100, and that'd be kind of a milestone metric for you, wouldn't it?
Right. I mean, if anybody ever, follows me on Strava and knows my training, getting a high CTL is not something that you would acquire necessarily for the way I train. So yeah, I've been able to, and it really is. I mean, this says about everybody, because I'll have some weeks I'll really, maybe a 14-hour ride week, but then a lot of them are a little closer to the 8, probably average is 8, I think, hours. It's consistent, right? Just staying consistent and riding. And that's what COVID has given me, is consistency.
The other tip to kind of get that CTL up is in Training Peaks, just lower your FTP. I found that when I'm having a bad week and I make that change, the chart goes up and I feel a little better.
Well, what's interesting is I did that like when my fitness was really bad, February. And so I brought it because it had been too high. So I brought it way down accordingly. I got a new power meter, which was also kind of brought all that into effect. And so, yeah, it was going up. But the real thing is then, can you hang on rides? And I've been doing fine. So I think that the numbers actually speaks to what my personal fitness is. But, so let's talk about Jason Graffath real quick. And by the way, today I'm sporting a new shirt from Folsom Bike. I appreciate it. I paid full price, people. So it's just a bike shirt. I paid full price.
What all those items are by any chance?
So I haven't actually looked at, I like the color. And there was a bike on there. It wasn't too weird. So I grabbed it. Paid full price. Well, except for team discount stuff. So, anything we say on the show does not reflect on anything I say. It doesn't reflect on anything else or you on data driven. These are our own opinions, right?
definitely.
Okay. Well, yeah.
They're the opinions you let me have.
Hey, we had a good discussion on text last night, which is always the absolute worst way to try to have a conversation about anything. But
it's hard to get tone across, that's for sure.
Right.
Anyway, Jason Graffath, we were talking about him.
Yeah, so we did this very individual time trial series, and it ended up we finished it off. He was done with it, and a lot of it we've been doing out in the canal, and people know that out kind of in Rancho Cordova. It's flat, doing all these time trials. And then he had one a few weeks ago out at Beatty, a nasty climb up there. And then this one was on the backside of Beatty, and it's just this area I climb constantly. So I was pretty well aware of this road. And as what's funny is I went out Monday and set the new KOM on it. We were just, warming up for this thing. And then I text you, and you were out riding. And of course, you insisted on, forced yourself to go and best my time by like 3 seconds or so, which,
well, to be fair, when you took the KOM on Monday, you took it from me. So you just didn't take it. You took it from me.
I took it pretty good.
Pretty proud of it too. So
it was like 30 seconds or so.
I felt a little extra motivation to go back out there and take it. I think we got lucky that day because the wind was pretty favorable. I think we both agreed on that.
Yeah.
A little bit of a tailwind push. So the segment that Jason had put together for this last week, so this was week 16. So he'd been putting this on for basically 4 months just to kind of give some folks a little bit of feel that are missing racing. But so this was week 16, and like you noted, it goes up the backside of Beatty. So in between Folsman, Eldorado Hills, new developments going in. So there's some new connector roads, and there's a road that ties, I guess, Iron Point, whatever it's called up there, to the top of Wilson. And it's an interesting little segment. It's looking at Strava, 1.3 miles and 6%, but that's kind of deceptive because the opening third is kind of flat to rolling. And then you've got a quarter to a third of a mile that is 10%, and then you've got a finishing half mile or so that's probably net about 7 to 8%, but there's a couple of steep pitches that are 10+% in there. So it's a challenging little climb that I think, just given the nature of it, it doesn't necessarily favor one type of person. And we had a good mix of people that came out and did the event, and looking at who's kind of in the top 5, it shows you that it's a good course profile for a lot of different people, big guys, small guys, and what have you. So it was a pretty challenging little segment, and I know you had a good day on it. You kind of doubled down on your effort from Monday. So it looks like you came in top 5 there on the day, which is pretty solid.
Yeah. So it was just. We'll talk about this a little bit and then get off of this. But yeah, so when I had taken it from you, I didn't really push super hard. There's a kind of a flat rolling, a little gradual uphill section before the climb starts. I hadn't pushed hard there. We had a tailwind. I still thought there was 30 seconds to be had for me. And I definitely, the first thing I think I texted you at the time is, winner is easily going to be sub 6 minutes. So I did take off like 20 some seconds from my time when you and I had gone on Monday. And that was really all I can do. I mean, I set a 5-minute power number all time for me. And, look at Lars Lofgren ended up winning it 5 minutes, 41 seconds. I was 5:53. So there's, a bunch of guys right into that. And it was fun. I mean, I was really glad. It's kind of fun too, because you knew this was the end of Jason's thing. And you did not do as well as you had done. Matter of fact, you were off. This time here shows you at 6:12, but this was from the other day because I can't search by just the day. So
yeah, so I ended up doing like a 6:37, which was kind of a bummer, but not terribly unexpected given the change in wind direction. But what I was kind of bummed about was a drop in power. It seemed like we both agreed that we felt a little flat yesterday or the day before, whenever it was, and you still performed really well. Like you said, you when you took the KOM from me, you didn't go full gas in the flat rolly section, so kind of kicking up there helped you out quite a bit. But like you noted, Lars won, and looking at second place there, Clint Clausen. Third place, or I guess tied for second, is Garrett, and then in fourth place, Ryan O'Dell. So those 4 guys are like 4 of the broad spectrum end of cyclists. You've got the really lean, spindly climbers in Garrett and Lars, and then you've got the bigger guys in Clint and Ryan. So if you were to look at the power that those guys put out, you're probably looking at a range of 75, 100 watt differences between the two to come up with the same time. And Lars is relatively new to the area. I think he joined us from Colorado. Is that where he's from? But he's more of a cyclocross gravel guy. He's done some of the gravel events and it's done really well. I think he's been up there with like Pete Stetna and whatnot. But Clint is a mountain bike gravel guy, and then you've got Garrett, who's probably a pure road guy. So you got a really interesting mix of people coming in the top places here. So kind of a cool way to end and get that range of riders.
Right. And what was cool about that, I mean, look, 5 minutes, right? So and it was steep enough to where, and kind of the same with the Beatty thing. This is actually, I'm giving Jason a lot of credit. And by the way, if you join us live here, make any comments. Mark Tucker is the only one he likes to join it. Thanks, Mark. He says, can't say criterion for liability reasons. I'm not sure what you mean by that. Maybe Chris remembers what it is. Yep. Lars is in here. He says, yep, Colorado. Maybe we'll ask Lars, where in Colorado? Colorado, where? I did a lot of racing out there at one point, so I'd be interested to hear that. But what was cool about this segment, and we saw it with the Beatty as well, it was short enough where the power guys, I mean, Ryan O'Dell, he's a bigger guy, but he put out the numbers. I can hold a 4 or 5 minute, super high wattage, but I'm not going to be able to compete with that at all, over 20-minute time. So it was fun. It kind of equaled things out. And thanks for Jason for doing this. Look at my prior message first, and then you have a thumbs up. Maybe I'm missing something, Mark. Maybe just keep doing it. But anyway, I don't have another message here. Maybe it's our system. So anyway, any other last comments about the Jason criterion or the Jason thing? And who won this? Ken Todd won this overall. Ken, another Colorado boy. He
is he? Okay.
Yes, he lived out there before I did, and then he moved here, and he has actually some interesting stories to tell as well. But it was good. Looks like he won the last Omnium for this one, and Jason Graffath was right up there. I don't think Jason missed any. I missed the last few because I just got tired of it. But this is a great way to kind of send off. And look, the reason we're talking about this is, first of all, it's racing in our area because we don't have much. And I thought it was a great thing that we had during COVID initially. It really got me out there riding. It got you actually off the couch for a little bit.
Just for a little bit. I'm back on it.
All right. Parker is where Lars said, yes, I actually know that well. The Canterbury Park, Canterbury something or other, is a golf course out there. Wonderful. I used to go play out in Parker because I live down in that south part of Denver as well. Good to have you on the show here, Lars. Appreciate you joining us in. Okay, so anything else?
Lars also, when you mentioned we did the segment out on Beatty proper, I think Lars also destroyed us there as well. So I think you used to own those steep climbs kind of in and around the Beatty area, and he may have kind of taken ownership away from you there. So you may need to leverage that fitness you've got and try and go take some of those KLMs back.
It's not going to be possible with my weight. I'm literally 10 pounds higher than I should be. And you think of that, I'm 160. And if I'm 150, which I would have been racing on, that makes a big difference for those. So, and then I'm getting ancient, Chris. So we're backpedaling a lot and I'm tripping over my feet. So probably not going to come up very well for that. Any last things you want to say about Jason's thing? Praise him a little bit.
No, I thought it was a really fun event. It filled a pretty big void for races and race rides for some people. And I know on Facebook, you've seen a lot of thanks and appreciation directed toward Jason. A lot of folks, Chris Dawson noted it was a good event for him and his son to look forward to on Thursdays. And
right.
It seemed to get a lot of people out and compete that might not have done so otherwise. So it was a cool event, and it seemed really well organized, and it was fun to have a variety of events. And we did get some gravel mixed in there. We got some short sprints, we got some longer TTs, we got some pure TTs. So it was really cool. Enjoyed it. So big thanks to Jason for taking that on and dealing with the never-ending gripes from the usual bike racers. So
Right. Well, I think when I had him on, cause he and we had a podcast kind of talking about the whole thing. And then he was getting shit. Someone quit like right away because they didn't like, something he was doing. You remember that we were doing those powered things. What's interesting is I did 5 minutes up, almost 6 minutes, yesterday, higher power than I did for the first, those power checks that we did.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, I guess
you just got really fit.
Well, climbing helps. It's hard for me to do that.
Okay.
Yeah. So let's talk about the Dauphine. And I said, hey, I'll hail the Dauphine. It's going to play on words here because I don't know if you saw this, Chris. We'll check out the back of Declerc here. Those on YouTube are able to take a look at this. So pretty nasty little marks all over his body from the hailstorm. And I got a little bit more. There was actually a video here that CyclingNews had posted with this, but it looks like they've taken it off. So maybe they got dinged with a little trademark thing here. And it was with the Israel Cycling Academy, a tweet that they had. And basically these guys got nailed with this storm. And you had been mentioning something yesterday about, the safety of the riders. But evidently this was guys that were like 20 some minutes behind the lead group. The lead group got rained on. They didn't get hailed on. And some of the guys were kind of going for cover. And Declerc himself said he didn't get a back massage that night. But after that, he basically, as you can understand, but he's like, the marks are all gone. So it was, it's not as bad as it makes it look, but still kind of icky.
It seems like if these are the guys that are 20 plus minutes back, I mean, all the more reason to just kind of like, all right, let's scoop them up and get them the heck out of here. They're just pedaling to the finish. It's not like they're contesting anything. And I think I read something where Tony Martin may have finished the furthest down because he just said to hell with this and he hid under a tree until the hailstorm passed and then he kind of soft pedaled in.
Well, actually, that's what I'd seen this on this link here earlier, and it was a video of him, and he crawls up the mountainside as the hail's coming down. And he's hiding with this little family, helps this kid get up this road, and then they're just sitting there. And then when he starts to come out, it's just the road's covered with all this this stuff. So it reminds me, hey, Lars can join in on this. When you're out in Colorado, even in the summer, you're going to go for a ride. I always took a vest with me, and you get hailed on like this just for no reason, just because you lived out in Colorado.
Yeah, I saw a bunch of comments that were kind of alluding to a similar event that happened to Masters Nationals in Bend circa 20, right. Who knows when. I don't think it was probably 13. As bad as that, but I don't know what they did in Bend, if they kept racing or if they kind of put a hold on the race or what. But it seems like there's all this talk about rider safety. We just had the incident with Fabio Jakobsen and trying to look out for riders and the Riders Union. Kind of speaking on behalf of the riders, and this seems like a good opportunity to say, hey, let's either pause this and be generous with the cutoff time so riders aren't getting pelted, or just kind of scoop them up in the team cars and give them the last time as the most recent finisher or something. It just seems silly to have them race through that.
Maybe I was saying maybe just do Omnium for everything now, right? You just don't really have to finish and you have to get points. Mark Tucker, his point, some clarification here. It's Clovis practice laps. That's because he can't say crit. Next Thursday, had 30 guys cone out this week and some fast-paced action. Okay, good to know. You and I have been. I have, and I'm texting with you, so I know you have as well. Following. Oh, you wanted to do. Was there anything else you wanted to say about that?
The Dauphine. The only thing I noted on here was, Cycling Tips does a really good job putting up photos of races, and they had some pictures from that event, and they had the pictures of the riders that were, dealing with the hail, and the riders are dealing with the hail, and the podium's already like being ushered off stage. So it's just, I remember seeing that at Amgen when we were up at Tahoe. They were wrapping up the podium as riders were still finishing and kind of applauding the guys on the podium as they finish. So it's an interesting part of cycling where they're so efficient with getting through that process and wrapping it up that, they're done with the podium and guys are back in the buses while other guys are still, 20, 30 minutes behind. So it's just interesting to see that.
Right. Well, that's just part of bike racing there, Chris.
Yep. Well, we don't do that locally. We have to wait hours.
Right. So Lars does chime in here. Yeah, nice to cool off in the afternoon, but it makes for dirty bikes more often. Nicer to be here. Well, we're glad you're here in California. Okay, so let's go do some World Tour wrap up because there's a lot of stuff just coming. I mean, I honestly, if I could sustain this kind of excitement, compacting everything into like 3 months that we're having is kind of exciting. I mean, there's racing every day, and everyone is like peaking for this. I mean, it is teeny little races where you might just have some unknown win it, or one guy that's good out there that, Max Schachmann's winning it, and there's kind of competition. This is like full blown everything. And I don't know, it may tone down a little bit once the tour gets going here, but so we'll just go over some things we talked about here before, and then you chime in on any of this. I'll just throw out some stuff. Strade Bianche, obviously we know Wout van Aert won that. David Formelo in the news again, and Max Schachmann third. Annemiek van Vleuten. There was some I'm trying to remember the female American that did well there, or at least the NorCal one on Trek. Trek's team, their whole women's team, I guess, got their bike stolen. Kind of nasty.
Yeah.
Tour of Poland. We obviously know about the crash on stage one, the Groenewegen controversy. World champ Pedersen finally got a win, so that was good. And then Evan Pol just destroyed. He's like 4 for 4 in his last stage races, or ever stage races. Did like this monster 50-kilometer attack and held everyone off for the win. It was quite impressive. Solo 50-kilometer attack for the win. The Tour de Occitanie, Bernal gets the win. Teammates there, Sivakov and Tao Gegenhardt. Even Chris Froome helped in with the duties, and that's something you and I can talk about here in a little bit. Bernal did look fine after his COVID, little issue he had there. Nairo, he's starting to look a little better, but he had this big wreck in Colombia, so he's kind of coming back a little bit slower. I think Bernal then won Occitanie. Ventoux, we had the Russian winner, Alexei Vlasov. Martin Guillaume, whatever. He looked pretty good. Richie Porte looked pretty good as well, and he's been able to stay up in the top of all those. Then the Tour
I don't know
d'Alin.
anything about Ventoux. Was that a one-day race?
Okay. Yeah, so they had that one last year, and Jesus Serrata ended up winning that over last year over Bardet. And then this year they went up to the chalet. They took a loop around, and then they came back and did the whole thing again. And so it's a really cool race. It's got a horrible name. It's Ventoux. I don't know. I can't even pronounce the whole thing. But and last year it was the first year. It was before the tour. People were not really going for it. But this one, comes back. Everyone's jazzed to go. So it was a little bit more action. And Vlasov, do you know much about him? Tall, skinny Russian guy that goes uphill well.
Does he have an Everest record? If not, I don't know much about him.
He's not legit unless he's got an Everest record. Exactly. Tour d'Alin, that was Bernal. Bernal versus Roglic, and those two teams kind of came together. Roglic ended up winning that, and pretty impressive. There was a day there, Sepp Kuss. No, that wasn't Burgos. I just wanted to mention that real quick. I think it was Burgos. He was helping Bennett. And there was a day where Bennett was falling off, and Sepp looked like he could have possibly won that day, but he turns around, kind of sits up and goes and help him. So Alin is kind of a precursor to Dauphine, which we have here. Milan-San Remo, we know who won that one. You talk about that real quick. So did you see any of Milan-San Remo, and were you surprised? Did you pick? I had picked terrible pick.
I picked Bavaria. Like the last
30K.
I had picked Caleb Ewing, and you had Linder on, and he had picked Julian Alaphilippe. So I think he had the best pick of the lot there. But no, I caught the last 30K, and it was kind of a typical Milan-San Remo, where it's the break gets away early, and they plod around for 250 kilometers, and then they start racing. But it was pretty explosive for the last 30K. Shed a lot of the sprinters early. I think the last pure sprinter to get kicked off was Sam Bennett. He made it up maybe 3/4 of the Poggio before he just kind of lost connection. There were some good attacks up the Cipresso. And there was a moment where Daniel Oss had gotten away between the two climbs, and the group kind of let him get away. And I don't know if that was to the benefit of Bora or not, because he's usually the last guy to really support Sagan. And Sagan was in the chase group in the finish, and I just I don't know if he had Oss, would he have had more kick to kind of connect to the attack that Alaphilippe put in or not. But it was on the Poggio was where the winning move went, and that's usually where it goes. Alaphilippe put in a good attack. Do you recall if he initiated the attack, or was he following an attack by Nibali?
I don't think it was Nibali. There was two other guys that had been just off the front just a tad bit, and they had just brought them back. And then I think Alaphilippe went, and
I know
and
Nibali
Wout
went with him,
Okay.
and couldn't hang, and then Alaphilippe attacked through, and then Wout was able to connect on to Alaphilippe. But then over the top, Wout was getting distanced, and then Alaphilippe went over the top solo with maybe like 3 to 5 seconds, which is pretty impressive. And then Wout was able to connect on maybe a third of the way down, and they got down to the bottom of the descent with 8 to 10 seconds on the group. And that's always an interesting position to be in, because you've got the group charging pretty hard. You've got 10 seconds, but you don't want to play cat and mouse too much, but you kind of want to play cat and mouse because you don't want to be put in a cruddy position. It ended up that Alaphilippe was able to put Wout in a really good spot, where I think Alaphilippe was on Wout's wheel for the last maybe 1,500 meters.
At least, if not 2K, yeah.
Yeah, and then it was kind of iffy as to whether or not they'd get caught or not, because with 500 meters to go, I think they were still, maybe had a 3-4 second lead, if that. And that kind of forced Wout to open his sprint. Alaphilippe tried to come around, but he just couldn't hold him off. Or he couldn't get around Wout.
Some impressive points there, as you described it exactly as it came out. Wout easily, well, I wouldn't say easily, but did a real good job of catching him on the descent, and then went to the front and almost put Alaphilippe in a little bit of hurt trying to stay up with him. And then they were swapping turns for a little bit, but Wout never, because they only had like 10 seconds at the most over the field, and Wout really never let up, even playing the cat and mouse and taking the sprint from the front. Very impressive that whole way down. When I mentioned at the Open that there was a mirror, last year Alaphilippe wins Strada Bianca, wins Milan-San Remo, and this year you got Wout. Now Wouts are more back-to-back, but still impressive nevertheless. One thing that was I've heard a lot about was they changed the route a little bit, as far as I think a little bit away from the inland coming down. It's like 300 and some K. It's supposed to be 300K or right in 280, but with all the neutral and everything, some guys showed like 317 on their Garmin's, just huge. But evidently there was just they wanted to go away from some towns because there was so much more this time of year instead of the early part vacationers. So those cities didn't want that there. So it put a little bit more climbing, and you can see that because there's no way Sam Bennett should probably be kicked from the group, may not be able to go with the attack, but the sprinters are typically there. And it's 3, 4, or 5 years in a row now, you kind of have a non-sprinter taking the win. So fantastic race. Last 30K was awesome.
Yeah, no, that seems like it's been the case recently for this event. Is the last 30K is where things heat up. It's almost like a normal sprint stage in a Grand Tour, where it's like, okay, let the break go. We'll just kind of conserve our energy and try and be as explosive as possible on the last couple of climbs. But it was interesting seeing that sprint between Alaphilippe and Wout, because you've got two guys that have completely different sprint form. Alaphilippe's bike was probably moving laterally as much as it was moving forward, and Wout was just like in a perfect straight line. It was interesting to see that. And one other thing I did hear, and I forget where I heard it, is Alaphilippe may have kind of eased up a little bit initially on the descent, realizing that Wout was about to connect. It'd probably be better for them to get to the bottom of the descent together, as opposed to Alaphilippe getting to the bottom of the descent alone and trying to hold off the group by himself. So, Wout definitely descended like a madman. But some people are speculating that, Alaphilippe kind of let him catch on. So, is there any truth to that? I don't know. Either way, it was impressive.
I would say this. I thought it was whether Alaphilippe's, if he sat up, that was a smart thing to do, first of all. Second of all, Wout would have easily caught him at the bottom, 3-4 seconds at the most there. I just think Wout's, the power he has and the ability to time trial in general, that was, of course, the way to do it. And then he might have just tried to maybe power an attack through Alaphilippe. I thought it was a perfectly fine thing. And he was fine. And he's got rim brakes. So I don't think those things don't work anyway. So he just can't use them on the descent. And so that's the way. Look, some people are making some comment, Dan and Sean, about Froome and Roglic, because we'll talk about that specifically. So just hang on, and we'll put those up. Let's actually go to the Dauphine. So that's happening right now. You got Ineos, you got Jumbo kind of coming together. Obviously this big, you talked about the sprint. I was watching that sprint and my first thought is Wout is going to have the straightest sprint possible after the Groenewegen Jakobsen thing. And he was like almost so self-conscious that the bike didn't even move. It was just, and Alaphilippe's just trying to get the win. So, it's also an interesting finish if you've seen there before, especially Caleb Ewing coming down there where they're sprinting so hard and it's kind of a rough road and their wheels are bouncing all over the place. But, Wout kept his down. So impressive. Okay. Criterium du Dauphiné. Started on Monday. And so we've had 3 stages so far. And you're seeing this, you kind of saw it with the Alin race. You saw it some with the Burgos. But now you got Ineos and you've got Jumbo just going at it. The only other team that's been real big so far has been Quite a Quick Step. And I think EF Education hasn't even, they just barely, the Dauphine, I think was their first race. They wanted to wait and see the protocols and all those other things. But you see those 3 teams just really coming at it. And obviously with Evan Pohl being able to win some stage races and that team can win sprints. But the reality is it's these 2 big teams coming together and clashing. What has been your take on them so far and which team, I think it's obvious, but which team do you think is winning the battle?
It's been pretty lopsided. It's you look at the stage results and it's been pretty much all in favor of Jumbo-Visma. You've got Wout winning the stage on the first day. Pretty steep uphill finish for the last 300 meters. It looked like it finished on like an 8 to 10% ramp. He held off Daryl Impey from Mitchelton Scott. And that's kind of the bread and butter for Daryl Impey is that kind of finishing sprint. So they did really well there, and the team did a really good job just like sitting on the front, ramping up the pace just to get him in position to win. And they're basically out Ineosing Ineos. I mean, they just put their team on the front, and they're able to just hammer the pace. I didn't see too much of yesterday's stage. I caught maybe the last 200 meters to kilometer or so, but it looked like the team pretty much did the exact same thing there where they just got to the front with 10K to go and just kind of continued to keep the pace high enough where no real attacks could go. And they put Roglic in a position where he could attack with 300, 400, 500 meters to go and get a nice solo win.
Before you go, I'm gonna tell you you're completely wrong. So what you saw was Ineos coming to the front. They're gonna bully everyone out, and they're like, "Hey, we're in this thing." And they lined their team up, and they were on the front, drilling it up there to the point where Froome's like in line, 3rd or 4th back. He's just staring down, doing his wobble head, and next thing he pulled out. He can't handle the pace, and they keep filling in. And you're just watching Dumoulin, you're at Sepkus, Dumoulin, Kruijswijk, and Roglic all just kind of in there. And Sepp he bounces around, he looks around like, is this you guys going hard? Next thing you know, 2K or so to go, the only Ineos rider left is Bernal. And then someone attacks, Sepkus goes and follows that. I think it was Bachmann. He goes instantly on that. Roglic is on his wheel. Then Bernal actually tries something, and Bernal what was interesting, he had actually got distance a few times there, and he kept kind of having to come up, and he was suffering on the back, and they just kept banging it. And then he tries a little attack. Sepp just easily closed that down, and it was Sepkus and Roglic the last until Roglic decided, I'm just going to go, and he gets the win. So Roglic gets the win. It was very impressive, and Ineos blew themselves, didn't time it right. And they put Bernal in a spot where he was isolated because I think they were going to, and they're going to have to change their tactics. And I don't know that this is sustainable for the tour either, but I don't know.
So
we'll talk about
it
Froome
looked
in a
like
bit.
when Roglic made his winning attack, Bernal tried to cover it. I think he was there for 20 meters and then just like he pulled off. I can't do this. So definitely a difference in form between those two.
And similar for today too. Roglic put an attack. Formolo ends up amazing long win breakaway, and Roglic went near the end with his group, and Bernal got distance. So it's interesting to see their tactics there. Sepkus once again being able to stay with the front. Say it again.
Today's stage was pretty good. I caught the last climb there, and definitely Jumbo-Visma was on the front for the entirety of that climb, bottom almost to top if you exclude Formolo. But they did a really good job just kind of metering their efforts and keeping the pace high. And, they weren't too worried about Formula, but they wanted to bring him a little bit because I think he was the virtual leader through the base of the climb. But yeah, they were able to kind of time it right, use Kruijswijk, use Hessink, use Dumoulin, and then ultimately save Sepp for the final effort and got him into position where Roglic was, I guess, relatively fresh enough to put a big dig in the last 200 meters and put some time on Bernal, who you kind of have to view him as his primary competitor in this and potentially going into the Tour. So it's good to see for him. I'm sure it's good to see him be able to put that time onto Bernal. But what I found interesting is that you had Wout van Aert, who we just talked about winning Strade, winning stage 1 of this, winning Milan-San Remo. He was doing a ton of work early on the final climb where, he was pushing an effort that saw Chris Froome fall off 2Ks into the climb. So he's definitely, getting his wins, but at the same time playing the full-on teammate role of just killing himself. Like a couple of years ago, Kwiatkowski used to do it in the Tour for Ineos or Sky, to the point where when he was done with his pull, he was just about to fall over, and that's what Wout looked like today. So he's definitely kind of filling that incredibly hard-working B role for the team and getting into a position where they're left with 4 relatively fresh guys to help Roglic to the finish. So it was cool to see them kind of out Ineos today.
Wout is amazing. I see him as a better climbing Sagan. And so, his sprint might not be as top as Sagan, but maybe a Matthew, but I know he goes up better than Matthews too. So very impressive for him.
He might even have a better sprint than Sagan. I mean, there was the stage he won on the Tour last year, and he beat the Italian sprinter who was with Quick Step at the time.
Fabio?
No. Italian.
It starts with a V, right?
Viviani. Yeah, no, I mean he beat him in a heads-up sprint, and he beat Ewan and all the other guys in the same sprint. So he's got some powerful kick to him. So he's a good sprinter.
Let's go through some of this. Dan, because Dan's got a little thread here. Froome is the man, he says, and then he comes back and says, we like this. Just saying, maybe former best man, but still a man. Okay. I don't know. I haven't seen the details on that, but I'm assuming so. Rogi killing them though. Is he pushing too hard? Pre-tour though, we want to talk about that. Sean Bagley chimes in here saying those ketone Easters must be working great. Yes, they are. And then lastly, he says our boy Sepp is killing it. He's Roglic's final lead out man. Last 2 days, he was the key pace driver up the climbs. Yes, he was super impressive. So let's talk kind of about those two things in Froome. So there's a concern about maybe Roglic is just coming in too piping hot. And hey, look what he did last year at the Giro. He was looking good. He was winning a ton of races, and then he comes in the Giro and he flops. Third place, I think, overall. The difference, though, with that is he won the Vuelta quite in convincing fashion. You look at the Vuelta and the Giro, though, of him. He had no. Sepp was with him. Laurens de Plus was there. I think Gesink was supposed to ride the Giro with him, and he got sick, and so wasn't there. So he had those two climbers with him. When the Vuelta is very, the Giro is very climby, predominant. Then de Plus pulled out midway or first part. You had Sepp Kuss, who's not the Sepp Kuss that we see now, or not even the Sepp Kuss we saw in the Vuelta. And Roglic had a lot of climbing in his legs. Racing in his legs going up to the Giro. So I think this is different. I think when you haven't had the full season of racing and everything, and you've had this time off, everyone's fresher. I think you could come in a little hotter, and you're showing your team, like you talked about guys peeling off. Dumoulin's on the front, just drilling it. People are just flying off the back. He pulls off and he slots himself in and does his best to finish still with the group. And I'm like, wow, that was pretty impressive because, Froome did a turn the other day too.
If Roglic is coming in too hot and falters, it's not like they can't look to Dumoulin. He's never won a Grand Tour, right? It's not like they can't look to Steven Kruijswijk. He's almost won a Grand Tour. So, they've got backups aplenty. Is Roglic even the guy? I don't know. Is he the guy that they're targeting for the Tour? I don't know.
You've got to say so. He is. I think I'm watching him finish things off. And going back to the Vuelta, where every day, there's a different guy that would kind of come in. Pogacar was all of a sudden strong, and then you had Lopez and Valverde, and he was never a problem. And he measured his racing out well, and he reminds me of that. Now look, we're taking a day by day. Oh, Bernal, he's kind of coming off, and anything can happen, right? I mean, it was a 5-day stage race that we're kind of basing everything off of. But it's very impressive to see that team meld, and they're doing great. It's impressive, especially to see Sepp Kuss take this amazing role. I mean, the climbing he's doing right now is, and I only imagine it's going to be getting better. So what's your take on that compared to Ineos and the breakdown of Thomas getting flicked on climbs, Froome getting flicked on climbs? Is he even going to be a Sivakov the other day? Was it today? He's making the finish and he's looking around and Bernal's not even with him. And I'm like, if you just maybe take care of your leader, you might have saved him another 10 seconds.
Yeah, I'm probably less worried about Bernal. I suspect he can ride into form, but Froome's coming off probably the biggest injury of his career, one of the biggest injuries of his career. He's not young. He's mid-30s. Thomas is also not that young either. So are they aged out? I don't know. But it seems like they're struggling more, and the likelihood of them rounding into form maybe less and less. There's still that speculation of, is Froome even going to be going to the Tour? And if you view Dauphine as kind of like the judge, and there's a couple more stages that are going to be really difficult in the Dauphine, but he's not exactly shining right now to the point where, he's not sitting on Bernal's wheel or being one of the guys to kind of pull Bernal along. So Froome, you almost want to say, okay, maybe you're not ready for prime time. We're going to have you continue to rehab and build some form, and maybe you'll be our guy for the Vuelta or for the Giro. I don't know. Especially it just seems like he's not the Froome of old at this point.
No, and he had a horrible crash, just a year ago. So, and especially in light of the way Jumbo's lighting it up when you've got some deficiencies and you're like, oh, this is how it's going to be in the Tour. We're going to we can't just hope that Froome rides himself in. I mean, if Thomas is already kind of looking suspect, but he's still looking better than Froome, maybe you don't take that gamble. What's interesting though is Froome. He looks like he's the team guy right now, and he's doing everything he can. And in the Tour de l'Ain, he set some hard pacing up the climb on one of the first days when Bernal won, and he was like going for like 2 or 3K, just super hard, and he shelled the group, and you're like, oh, good for him. My question is he doing that specifically to get on the team, and then once he's on the team, he's going to actually do his own thing, or is he really going to take a super domestique role? What do you think?
I think that they do it like they did the year Thomas won, where, Bernal, you're the leader. This is in the event they do bring Froome, but we're going to have kind of Froome shadow you, so to speak. And then in the event you falter, okay, we've got somebody that can step in and support you, because Bernal's great. He's still young though, and he won a Tour de France. But you do have this kind of 4-time winner guy who's extremely motivated to land a 5th result. So you kind of feel like if you do bring him, you do have to kind of keep him on reserve and ready to capitalize on any faltering by Bernal. I think Thomas, if you bring him, he's a work guy, and that's kind of all it is. I don't know as much about the depth of their team now. I know they lost Poles and a couple other guys, so I don't know if they do have the strength that they've had historically, where they can just put guys on the front and continue to just put the throttle down. They may have to just kind of let Jumbo-Visma do that and try and capitalize off any mistakes that they make.
Yeah, right. And so it's going to be great to see, because then if once a Tour team, once they select it, then we can put maybe some of that to bed, and then maybe Froome or whatever can focus on a different race if he doesn't make it. I'm always it's disheartening to me in a sense to not see him at the Tour, because I think he deserves that, but I don't know if he deserves it based on his actual riding as of right now. So that'll be an interesting. Okay, well, we'll keep that in mind and keep watching that. Speaking of, when I had mentioned, he might be on the outs. World Championships looks like it was supposed to be in Switzerland. They announced canceled, and then you're seeing tweets about maybe they're going to be able to find a different place. And the reason Switzerland, even though I was texting with you, it looks like they've done pretty good with their COVID stuff, but they do have a restriction where they limit over 1,000 people kind of demonstrations or gatherings. So I think it's just going to be difficult for the UCI to be able to conduct the World Championships based on the regulations that Switzerland has. So they're actually trying to go. And you've lamented the fact that, hey, China's not open. It'd be a great place to have this.
Well, no, that's because they
gotta have
canceled
it
all the
somewhere
UCI
close by.
races in China. That was done a couple months ago, where UCI said, no, we're not going to have any races in China. But I know, like you said, they canceled it initially, but now it's not necessarily canceled. We're working to find a replacement host city. Lepartier is saying, we're going to try and find a place that can host all the events, hopefully, on similar courses and parkour, and we should have an update for you by September 1st. Figure 2 weeks from now, we should have a clear picture on whether this goes forward or not. Obviously, that's all subject to change based on all the fluctuations in COVID statuses of the different European countries. But it seems like he's not given up, but he's hopeful that he can find something very similar. That way, anybody that was kind of gearing toward having this be their priority race, they're not totally hosed.
It's interesting because I'm thinking of, with this surrounding that we're having right now, a lot of times Worlds, they try to have a spot, and they sell it kind of like the Olympics, right? Hey, it's a moneymaker, and these towns bid for it. Where in this year, you're just kind of like, we just kind of want the event, and we don't want all the pomp and circumstance and the crowds around it. So yeah. I was actually, when I saw the number 1,000 with, it seems like they could be able to come in and still have that in Switzerland, but evidently not. And because I'm hoping that, you're not expecting to bring the crowds. So maybe they can still do it someplace, but shut down and just like, hey, we're just going to, and maybe they should have done it where they separated the racing out a little bit more. I don't know.
Yeah. If you think about the head count, it's difficult because you figure you've got
all the countries,
150 elite riders, you've got 150 women elite riders, you've got the juniors, you got the under 18s, you've got the coaches, you've got the Soigneurs, you've got this. In the end, I'm sure it tallies up to at least 1,000 people. And if they were able to say, hey, Switzerland, what if we just do the men's and women's elites, and we kick the can on the U23 stuff? Maybe they can make that happen. I don't know.
I don't know. We'll see if it even happens. And it's also, so they were talking about Rowan. Hey, remember Rowan Dennis? He was supposed to be on the, they were talking about the tour team. And I saw someone online say, he's not even, what about him for the tour team? Well, one, there's no time trial, so that's probably not going to be the thing for him. And then they were saying, there's an overlap with the UCI Worlds, but there's no overlap. I mean, we've talked about that. There's a little gap in there, but it's very close. So if he's really focusing and that's his main thing, then probably not going to see him anywhere near there.
Right. He'd be a good guy for the tour as a workhorse. It's a bummer that the Worlds and the tour kind of overlap like that.
Right. Okay. So let's take a look at this. I don't know if you can see this very well. Races coming up on the calendar here. You've got Il Lombardia coming up. Dwarves. Is it that the normal Dwarves? I don't know.
Oberland?
Yeah. I don't even know what some of these are. The Wallonie, Giro del. Come on, people. Can you make them a different language? Tour de Limousine, Omloop, Bretagne Classic, Grand Prix des Marbriers. Any of those? So Il Lombardia, that's basically the one we're looking at. So it looks like the riders might have even though there's Bretagne Classic, even though you have some of these, is that the one that's kind of a Strada Bianca type Bretagne Classic?
No, I don't think so. You're thinking of another one that I can't remember the name of. But.
Yeah, well, there's a few of them there, but anyway, so there's some races coming up, and we will hopefully have a little bit more. Anything you want to say about
Leon is what you're thinking.
But there's another one as well besides Trobo Leon. Il Lombardia. Anything you want to talk about that one? I know.
Yeah, that's a big race. That's one of the few monuments. It's typically a fall classic. It's up there in kind of prestige with Flanders and Roubaix. It's more for the climber oriented guy. So it's typically the race of the falling leaves. So it usually comes later in the season. So it's going to be, I did a quick look at the weather forecast. It's supposed to be a high of 87 in the race city. And I assume that's probably atypical for this event, which has a lot of climbing. I'd be curious to know how that's going to affect the riders because it's a slightly different set of circumstances. Some really big names are geared up to race, though, and they've got support from the teams. And the big names that I saw that jumped out at me were Remco. He's got high ambitions for this race. Nibali, Van der Poel, which odd to see him in that race, but he's there. George Bennett is going to be there, and he's coming off some good results. Michael Woods also, coming into form after his what did he break his femur? I forget.
Femur.
Fugelsang and Schachmann. So you got some really big names that are probably in really good form that are kind of gearing up for this. So it'll be interesting to see how Remco carries that 4-win streak that you mentioned not that long ago on this type of race against somebody who's a pretty well seasoned vet in Nibali. So you've got a guy who's just starting his career and another guy who's kind of near the tail end of his.
I haven't seen that Nibali's like top notch right now. You know who is top notch that you listed in there was George Bennett. He just won that Giro de Piedmont or something one day race, and I saw the last 10-15K of that one. Holy cow, strong attack off the front. Everyone's trying to come with him. What's the guy, Gianni Moscon? He tried to go with him on the climb and was suffering just because it was like big chain ring type of attacking and couldn't do it. And then he has 20 second gap there, and he held him off. It was right to the finish line. They almost got him. Elisi, I think, almost got him. But very impressive solo 15K attack with 2 little climbs in there. So I'm looking for something from him. But I would like to see Matthew Van Der Poel. I could see that. Doesn't Lombardia finish with have a pretty nasty steep climb, and then they have a downhill coming into the finish, and that an issue a few years ago with like a motorbike running into someone on the BMC rider. It seemed like up the climb or something. Me, but, or he had a motor in his bike.
It seems like it'd be a good opportunity for Van Der Poel to kind of capitalize on some of the attention that Wout's getting. They're kind of viewed in the same light where one guy is the outgoing cyclocross guy, and then you got Van Der Poel as the new cyclocross guy. But I'd also look to Schachmann to do well. He had a really good Strade Bianchi. I mean, he kind of faltered chasing Wout, but he seems to be in pretty good form, and he can climb well. So I'd look for a good result for him too.
Yeah. Sean Bagley says Richie Porte is quietly riding very strong under the radar. I would agree with that. He's been able to hang with those top, and it almost is like a washing machine effect of some time there's a good guy in there and then the next guy gets spit out. But he's been a consistent guy up in the top of the climbs with all these. But he hasn't been able, usually Richie Porte, you kind of see him being able to hang with it and then make an attack. I haven't seen him quite do that yet. But maybe he's definitely looking better than Froome, right? As we would say right now.
Yeah, definitely. He seems to be hanging in there pretty well. Maybe Froome should recruit him to be a domestique again.
Right.
Get the team back together.
Right. So one of our classic segments here, things that make you go, and maybe you'd like to chime in on what you have on yours.
Me? Okay. So the one that caught my eye and it's been kind of popping up here and there in social media is Wout winning all these races on a rim brake bike. And it seems to be totally contrary to what the bike industry tells us, where, the rim brake is dead. And, if you're using that on a descent, you're probably going to die because they won't work. But Cycling Tips did a really big breakdown of the rim brake versus disc brake controversy, if you want to call it that, with Wout. And what they ultimately concluded is that Wout's using the bike that will best allow him to win. And that's because the Bianchi Ultra XR4 in the rim brake model is significantly lighter than the disc brake model. So he's using that to kind of give himself the most optimum opportunity to win. And some of the other teams, like, would Julian Alaphilippe be using a rim brake bike if it was even made? So they don't have the Venge or the new tarmac in a rim brake. So the fact that he's on a disc brake is because that's all that's available to him. So it's interesting to see that there's this big push to disc brakes, but you still got guys who obviously can perform well on anything that you put under them. So
I don't even have a disc brake bike, right? I can imagine that push comes to shove or a breakdown, the disc brake bike is going to brake just a little better or much better, whatever, than the rim brake. But to say you can't win, I mean, this isn't the kind of technology that I think is going to make, or as you can see, make or break, the win in this sense. Mm-hmm. It might be a little game changers here and there in certain circumstances. If you don't know how to corner and stuff, and it might save you from, going into the walls or something, but it's an advantage. But is it going to make it or break it? No. Wout's, winning just fine. It's not like he's running an inferior product here. So it's a little, you're right. It's a little ridiculous. Like, oh my God, how do they even do this? It's like down two shifters. No, it's not. It's not even like that. So we'll make it. I mean, I still do.
And I assume that I didn't look, but I assume that Roglic is on a rim brake model. So his wins are going to be probably scrutinized a little bit here as well. So maybe this will be the rebirth of the rim brake.
Right. And as you said, some teams, I mean, some, the Pinarello the Bianchi that Wout is riding on, it comes in you can at least get it in rim brakes. Whereas, the Specialized, you don't even have that opportunity. You had another one.
I did. It's kind of an after fact because it's still early in the season, but Sagan's kind of having a ho-hum start. I think he got fourth at Milan-San Remo, which isn't bad, but a guy his caliber, you expect more. And on the first stage of the Dauphine, where Wout won, and be kind of a good finish for Sagan. I think he finished 95th or something like that. And so what's interesting is that Specialized is always pushing the Sagan model for an extra premium. And if he kind of continues this laissez-faire attitude of, well, whatever, racing's racing, and I'm just going to go through the motions, or they can continue to push that bike at such a high premium if it's modeled after a guy who's not that into racing anymore. So maybe he'll turn it around and go for another green jersey at the Tour. We'll see. But again, it's early, and maybe he's rounding into form.
Right. Well, he had just picked Wout for the green jersey already for the Tour. And you look at Bora, they're starting to bring on, climbers. A little bit different mix in that team. So, I think his contract is up at the end of this year, and, he gets paid a ton of that 5 million plus euros, whatever it is, with Specialized money. It'll be interesting to see what that comes to. But he's been very disappointing. Almost like, oh yeah, he's racing.
Right.
But the racing
he doesn't seem to be into it as much as he has in the past. I mean, you won however many world championships, however many green jerseys. It's, I can see the motivation falling to the wayside a little bit. Right. And the excitement of the actual racing is so good right now that people are kind of, they're not so excited about just Sagan. I mean, if he's doing wheelies and it's kind of boring time, okay, whatever. So I got a few of them here, but I'll skip one for next time. So Patrick Lefevre says he takes back his comments about putting Dylan Groenewegen in jail. And I like this. He's like, oh, look, I read I was saying things very emotional at the time. I listened to him. Of course, I saw his apologies. I'm not inhuman. I realized that it is also moved and that he did not want Fabio's serious crash. This is the part that I like, though. He goes, that does not alter the fact that he still made a mistake and has to bear the consequences. Totally understand that. I take back that he should be put in jail. That is the emotion of the moment. But we continue our lawsuit against him. Okay, so you're still a pompous douchebag, right? And I only say that because I broke down last time. I was listening to, I think it was Cycling Tips podcast, but for that whole exploding, barrier, you're not going to see such a call. We talked about this on the show. People are like, year and a half, $200,000. And I'm like, I didn't think it was, I've seen much more egregious. There's a Tour of Turkey where a guy, intentionally put some guy down. Those are situations you have. I just don't believe this would call for, and once again, those barriers seem to be a big problem. But for him flying through, that you don't expect to have part of your injury. Even Groenewegen broke his collarbone. He got hit with the barriers coming through too. So, but anyway, Patrick Lefevre, good luck there. Yeah, I think the Tour of Turkey, that was Theo Boss, I think, that intentionally pulled a rider down. I think he got suspended, but it wasn't anything outrageous. It was a short period of time. So I don't think he's really had a good return to the road scene since then. He's back on the track. Right.
And I'm trying to remember, it was a rider for Direct Energy, and then he was with EF. Pierre Lalonde. That's who it was. There's some videos you can find of him where he is off in a break and he's trying to, and then another time, it's all similar, I think, in the Tour, and he was trying to get the KOM, and he puts other riders in the dirt. Much more egregious than I say more egregious, but there's no barriers there, so it makes it look less so. But guys do this. Not that we need it, but
anyway. The Tour last year when you had Tony Martin brake checking riders on the front of the group. I mean,
they both got kicked out.
They did, but they didn't get anything more than that. So
no, because they didn't, break faces and stuff like that.
Right.
So I'm trying to do like a right instead of winners and losers, rider or ride of the week. What do you have for that? And then we'll close out here.
Yeah. So mine kind of extends beyond a week, and so rider of the weeks, I guess you could say, would be
Sure.
Wout. I mean, that guy is just
he's
coming back with a bang. He wins Strade, he gets third in Torino, wins Milan-San Remo, wins this first stage of the Dauphine, and then through stage 3, he's just killing it like an insane teammate. So he's come back to the road scene. He ended the season last year on a terrible injury in the TT at the Tour. So to come back in the form he's got now it's crazy. It's incredibly impressive. So it's good to see him coming back so well.
I heard where he had gone to some counseling just to try to get his mind back in a spot where he was not afraid. You had that a few years ago. You went down, had some wrecks, and then were a little more tentative. And so he's look, watching him descend Milan-San Remo down the Poggio. I mean, he looks to be fine. Quick thing about that, Michael Matthews ends up, two quick things here. Michael Matthews ends up third that day, but he smashed his hand. I guess he hit it on the wall as he's, there's full speed. He didn't go down, but he smashed his hand against the wall and it messed it up. Then I saw Dan Martin just today. He didn't start stage 3. He fell yesterday, fractured sacral or something like that in his back. And he's like, I don't have a scratch. I don't know, but they're pulling him out for the Tour. So the weird little injuries there. And then you had one other, you did have a loser, and I saw this one too today. So it blew my mind. So why don't you talk about that real quick, and then I'll do mine.
I wouldn't call it a loser per se. It's a loser of a situation. So I was scanning CyclingNews before we got on here today and see that there's an article about an 80-year-old getting banned for a year by USADA for testing positive, for testing positive for methyl testosterone. So it's a female track racer was wanting to get their age group world record verified. And as part of that, you've got to take a drug test. And they requested the drug test, and they came back positive for that methyl testosterone. And she indicated that it's in a medication that she'd been taking since 2005. Requested a retroactive TUE to get it all cleared up. USADA denied the TUE, saying there's nothing in the medication that you actually need, and we actually think you're taking it for performance benefits. So she contested that result, and an arbitrator stepped in and said, well, in my opinion, we should ban you from the time you first started taking the medication in 2005. So what the end result is, I think she's getting a 1-year ban from USADA, but it's just an unfortunate situation, and
so that is
what it is, I guess.
That sounds even, excuse me, once you break that down, and the arbitration and the different panel looks at that, it makes it sound like they think that she's actually more fraudulent than just even put on like, oh, you got caught. I mean, like, oh, no. Right. It's you're actually kind of bad news. You're bad grandma.
Well, they made it pretty clear that, no, we don't think you're taking it for health reasons. We think you're taking it for performance reasons. And
right. And she's like, what do you mean?
The breaks. Right. Yeah. It's a cruddy situation.
Yeah, it is. And that's where we're calling this stuff out. Once again, I appreciate everyone joining in and doing this. We're going to try to do this on Fridays at 1:30. Chris, I appreciate you joining me. Before I go though, my rider of the week, I don't have a loser, Chris. We're keeping it all positive here today. Wow. Rider of the week though is Evan Pohl. And you made a good point. I know you made this point, and I was hoping you'd comment, so you can exactly my thought too, which was Evan Pohl 50-kilometer attack. Everyone knows who this guy is, and he ends up winning the Tour of Poland by 2+ minutes, which is what he ended up staying away. Several climbs, he was just fantastic. They couldn't bring him back. On the same day, Carapaz had crashed too, so he didn't really get a chance to defend himself. He had a little trouble, but Evan Pohl comes across the line. He pulls out Jakobsen's number and he holds it up for the win. And I'm like, hey, that's kind of ballsy. It's not only did you, people know who you are, you're a big lightning rod, and they didn't catch you, but you had your number. And it's kind of like the Babe Ruth, right? Calling it out, saying, I mean, it looked like you planned it. I mean, I also thought what you did, which is.
Oh, well, my comment, I saw that in your notes here. I was just like, not necessarily a direct comparison to a Babe Ruth moment. Babe Ruth moment would be kind of like parading it out at the start line beforehand and saying, hey, everybody, I'm going to win solo. You guys can kick rocks. It's probably more likely that, once he started his solo breakaway and was evident he was gone, maybe he got the number from his team car or something like that.
Right.
But still, it's impressive that he was that far ahead to pull something like that off to show appreciation for his teammate. Yeah,
he's definitely, excuse me, he's definitely impressive. You got all these young riders. Pogacar is starting to come back and hold onto the top. It looked like he was up there today too, just kind of hanging on. Remco, I mean, fantastic riders coming into the fore. Sepp Kuss, I've been really satisfied with him. Sean Bagley replies here, that's a lifetime ban for her. Yes, because I don't think give her 5 more years. She's already way overdue at this point, it appears to me. So, hey, any last cycling comments, predictions for Il Lombardia?
It's just Il Lombardia. I don't have a pick. I think George Bennett is a pretty safe bet, at least to fare well. The biggest challenge I've got is, like you noted, there's a lot of racing going on, and it's really difficult to keep up with anything. At best, when racing is spaced out, I can follow one race, but now that there's 3 or 4 going at the same time, and you've got a 3-day, 4-day stage race followed up with another after another after another, it's there's a lot of racing, and if you can follow it, great, good job. I can't do it.
Right. I'm trying to maybe do a spreadsheet. Someone did do that on the NCNCA page, and I think John Simmons had maybe started that. It was a breakdown of all the races and who's covering them. Flow bikes. I even looked into the GCN. I'm like, hey, maybe because it's a fairly cheap package. But they have on their thing that they have Giro, but they don't actually cover the Giro. So I'm looking for a good Giro, and it looks like Flow or one of those is the only way to go, Fubo or something. It's just a little bit more, and I want to pay on that. So at this point,
I didn't realize this morning that I still have NBC Sports Gold, so I was able to actually watch some of the Dauphine. I didn't know I still had a subscription. So
I think they had extended that out due to the COVID. So with the cycling pass, so I think I'd got a notice about that. Yeah. So you got the Dauphine there. Anyway, that's what we have for the episode 187 today. Appreciate everybody joining. Chris, I especially appreciate you coming on and giving your expertise. You have a good week. Everyone have a good week. There's one way, look, just subscribe to the show, click a little button. Maybe you could even make a little comment on some of the other things. It does help us out. Our numbers are growing, and we want to be able to keep putting these shows out for you. Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Chris.
Thank you.